Okay.
So what chapter should I be on?
2. But you don't really need the book right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I read chapter 1.
Good.
All right, so to get started, our opening activity would be a question. Have you ever been asked to take on a task you were reluctant to do? What was the reason for your reluctance and how did you respond? Did you decline or request, make excuses, or accept with reservations? So
Wow.
take a moment to think about that. Being asked to take on a task you were reluctant to do.
It sounds like every day.
I was just going to say, there are some things that I really don't want to do, but we do them anyway.
Yeah, well, you know, I have a wife who always asks me to do things, you know, like pick up your clothing. Yeah, you know, no, pick up your shoes. No, she doesn't say that anymore. After 50 years of marriage. A slow learner. Anyway, other things. You've had plenty of time to think now.
Oh, I remember I was asked to teach Sunday school. And I had a young group, preschool, I think. I didn't do it today. They ended up crying. Yeah, right. I guess I was too strict or something. I don't know.
Well, preschoolers cry a lot. Goes to the territory.
Yeah.
Wait till September around here.
When,
Come on in, Carol.
Hey, Carol.
Yeah, all right. We're talking about the opening activity now. Have you ever been asked to take on a task you were reluctant to do, and what was the reason for your reluctance and how you responded and so on? All right, Dale, you were
when I mean, there's lots of things. Whenever somebody, something that's a lot of work, my first reaction is, oh, come on, do we have to do all that? But when COVID first started, I had to preach. I mean, in the very beginning, when everyone was still in church, to preach with the face mask, not the mask, the shield. And I put the shield on, and it felt ridiculous. And I asked the pastor, "Do I really have?" Because it's like your voice only goes up to the shield and then stops, and it's so awkward. And I said to him, "Do I really have to preach with this plastic shield on?" Because it was so unusual. And he said, "Yep, that's what we got to do now." That's the first thing I thought of.
over there.
Yeah,
So you accepted it with reservation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I accepted it with I didn't. A lot of these things, I would say I didn't have the opportunity to decline the request. I usually.
Yeah.
I was asked to teach, and I had never taught before. And I was very reluctant to take it on. It made me very nervous because I was teaching to people who all knew me. And that's very hard to stand up before your peers and teach. You know, it's almost impossible to keep their attention because they know what you're going to have to say. They already know it. So it was an interesting experience, but I got asked back, so either that or they were desperate.
What did you teach?
Real estate. I was in the real estate business all my life. When I graduated from high school, my father gave me a building lot. And he said, "You figure out what to do with it."
Oh, nice.
It was only a little 60 by 100 lot. And I had an architect, he gave me plans out of the book. You know, and here, you can build it this way. And I went to the Builders Institute in East Meadow, and I studied there for, I don't know, a couple of nights a week for maybe a year to learn how to build a house. And finally, the fellow who was running the course said to me, "Why don't you just sell somebody the plans?" Because you get too deeply involved in it. You know, you don't have to know how many PSI are in the concrete. Just let the concrete guy pour the foundation. You know, and I finally did. I just sold a lot.
So did you build something?
Actually, I bought an old house in Huntington, and I restored it. It took about 15 years.
Yeah.
200-year-old house. You can't imagine. I mean, there was, in the attic, there was knob and tube wiring, if you know what that is. It's little insulators with wires running from one to the next.
Yeah.
And it's not dangerous. And that's one of the reasons why old houses burned down at the time, because all you had to do was touch it and you could make a fire. But I spent time restoring that, and it was, in many respects, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. I wonder if there's any people online that have something they want to share about that.
Early in my career, I was working in Huntington Hospital, and a doctor grabbed me and said, "Come with me." And I knew the doctor, and he took me into a patient's room who was in the last moments of his life. And I was terrified. I didn't know what to expect. And all I wanted to do was run. And I didn't touch the person or anything because I had never, I was 21 at the time. Had no idea what was going on. And God taught me a lot that particular time, because now I know it's important to touch and to talk to people who are in their last of being alive on the earth.
Okay.
I had occasion.
That was Sue.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. I got a shoebox out of the attic, which was, the house belonged to people named Prime, who were very instrumental in the founding of Huntington. And he was a doctor. And he served on a ship in Caribbean. And they were taking aboard guys who were wounded. And the way they were treating them was with turpentine. It was the only medication that they had. And so they would give them portions of turpentine. Of course, they would kill them.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to read his letters, because he knew he had nowhere to go and nothing. Finally, a hospital ship from someplace showed up, and they had medication.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Fascinating stuff that you read that people do.
Yeah. Crazy. Okay.
All right.
Okay. You can move on.
Yeah.
To our opening prayer.
Got to speak up.
Okay. Open our eyes, O Holy One, to signs of your presence among us. Make us aware of what you are calling us to, and open our hearts this day to respond. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, just before we start the video, Carol, do you know everybody?
No.
Well, then I think we should introduce.
You don't go to 10:30.
She's an 8 o'clock person. Patsy said.
What? Carol.
Carol Huffman.
I'm Ed.
Ingrid talks about you. But if you listen to Ed, you know everything.
Okay.
And you know Ricardale.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Well,
I like how you tell your stories too.
And
Easy to listen to.
and Carol and I were confirmed together,
that's right.
and at Grace Lutheran in Uniondale, and we graduated from high school together. But I'm a lot older than she is. So no, it was just funny because Barbara Simon came in before you came in, and she also went to Uniondale High School and Grace Lutheran and so on. Yeah. So it's creating a certain kind of an image of the parochial nature of this congregation, but it's quite a coincidence. Okay. All right, we have a video here, and I need to get feedback from you guys in terms of whether you get to see it or not, right? Are you seeing anything yet?
Just a gray
no.
screen.
No?
No. Just a black screen. Oh, I see something now.
Yeah, you see that, yeah. Right now, let's see. Got to get back to the wherever the video is. Where is this video? Okay. All right, I'm gonna. Right, well, we'll try it again. I know what I'll do. Here we go. You see that, the black screen?
No.
You don't see
No,
most?
not yet.
No?
No, not yet.
All right. It's a little tricky.
Yeah.
Here we go. You'll see this.
Okay.
Yep, got it.
Yep, now I see it.
In our first session, we left Moses in Thebes, and it was there that he grew up to the age of 40. And Acts 7:22 says, Moses learned everything Egyptian wisdom had to offer, and he was a man of powerful words and deeds. So we've come to the land of Goshen, the breadbasket of Egypt. And we've come here because Moses came here at the age of 40, grown up in the lap of luxury, educated by the finest teachers, grown up in Pharaoh's own house in the midst of wealth and power, and yet he'd always known that he was an Israelite who was adopted into Pharaoh's household. And I think at the age of 40, he was having an existential crisis, if you will. He was trying to figure out, who am I really? And so he came to the land of Goshen because this is where the Israelites had settled under Joseph. But more than that, it's where the Israelites were in bondage, where they were forced into the building of projects for the pharaohs. And when he arrived here in the land of Goshen, he immediately encountered an Egyptian who was beating an Israelite slave. And so what he did, the feelings of justice begin to permeate, they begin to well up within his heart, and he decides that he has to do something. One day, after Moses had become an adult, he went out among his people, and he saw their forced labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew. He looked around to make sure no one else was there. Then he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Someone saw Moses kill the man and reported it to Pharaoh. And when Pharaoh heard, Moses was considered to be a great threat because he was born among the Hebrews, raised in Pharaoh's household, and now, having seen the Israelites suffering, he actually killed an Egyptian to protect them. And so a death sentence was issued for Moses. And Moses flees, and he travels across the Sinai Peninsula to the land of Midian. Now, Midian, as you can see in the map, was at this time primarily in western Saudi Arabia and the regions around it, but likely also included parts of the Sinai Peninsula. And tradition has it that Moses actually travels down to the southern Sinai. It's there that Moses meets Zipporah and ultimately marries her and becomes a sheep herder for his father-in-law. And he'll spend the next 40 years in this land. I'd like to take you there so that you can see this place where Moses will spend 40 years tending his father-in-law's sheep. So what you see in the distance then is both the place where Moses would have tended his father-in-law's flocks. This again is the land of Midian, and he would have tended his flocks in that valley. And then in a subsequent episode, I'm going to take you there, and we'll remember the fact that this is where the Israelites, after they were set free from slavery in Egypt, came in and camped at the base of Mount Sinai. This is the land of the Sinai, a barren land. It's a very difficult and harsh land. Desert-like, there are wells and oases in various places. And to this day, you continue to see sheep herders tending their sheep in this area. I want you to imagine the man who'd grown up a prince in Egypt, living in the beautiful city of Thebes along the banks of the Nile River, now spending the next 40 years of his life living here in this barren wasteland. One day, at the age of 80, Moses is tending his father-in-law's flocks in the wilderness around Mount Sinai, or Mount Horeb. And as he's tending them, he notices that there's a bush that's set aflame, and he goes to see what's going on, and the bush is not consumed by the fire. He hears a voice coming out from the bush saying, "Moses, Moses," and he's terrified. "Here am I," he says. And then he hears these words, "Moses, take off your shoes, for you're standing on holy ground." And so Moses removes his shoes, his sandals. And then he says, "Who are you?" And the voice from the bush says, "I am the God of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I've heard the cries of my people, Israel, suffering in bondage in Egypt. And Moses, I've chosen you. I've chosen you to set them free." In our own lives, we're meant to, when we look at the Moses story, part of what we're meant to ask is, where is God calling us? Are we paying attention to the places where God is inviting us, beckoning us, calling us to be a part of his work and his purposes? And we're meant to remember that Moses, though he argued with God in the end, finally said, "Okay, I'll go. Here am I. Send me." In the 300s, a monastery was built at this location that marks the place of the burning bush and where Moses experiences his call. We're at St. Catherine's Monastery at the base of Mount Sinai. It was built in the 4th century. St. Helen, the mother of Constantine, was actually the person to build the first church here, recognizing the importance of this place as the location where Moses first met God. So we're going to go inside and tour the monastery. Let's take a look. So of course the doorways are designed to be to require you to bow as you enter, as a way of expressing adoration, worship, humility to come into this place. There we go. An active monastic community that lives here, and of course a large number of people who come as pilgrims visiting this place. Christians largely, but of course there are many others who come too. Jews and Muslims who also come to revere, and of course for Muslims, Moses is a great prophet. For the Jewish people, he is their founding lawgiver, prophet, lawgiver, and this place represents Judaism's defining story. The monastery is surrounded by beautiful mountains, including the mountain of God, Mount Sinai, and you can understand why for 1,700 years Christian monks, monastics have come to this place to meet God and to listen for God's call on their own lives, something that we still seek to know and do to this day. Here we find the 4th century church that St. Helen built in honor of Moses and his encounter with God in the burning bush in this place. And though we can't go inside, it's forbidden to take cameras inside. I've been inside, it's beautiful. But this is where people, well, from the time of Moses, so for 3,200 years have encountered God in this place, in this valley, surrounded by the mountains, with Mount Sinai behind us here. And today, pilgrims still come here to meet God. So as you come through the monastery, on the back side of the chapel, you find this bush. It's, they call this the burning bush. It's unique. It continues to grow and grow, but has never been watered by the monks. And they claim that sometimes at night, they'll see lights flickering inside of it. Exodus chapter 2, verse 16 says this, "Now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill it from a well. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up, came to their rescue, and watered their flock." And of course, one of those young women was a woman named Zipporah, who would become Moses' wife. And this well, located within the confines of the St. Catherine Monastery, is said to be the well, Moses' well, where he drew the water and provided it for Zipporah, his wife, or his future wife. It was here in the wilderness, in front of that burning bush, that God spoke and revealed himself to Moses. And he said these words, "I am the God of your father, Abraham's God, Isaac's God, and Jacob's God." Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, "I've clearly seen my people oppressed in Egypt. I've heard their cry of injustice because of their slave masters. I know about their pain. I've come down to rescue them from the Egyptians. So get going. I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." I love this text because it tells us that God sees our suffering. He hears our cries, and he knows our pain, and he longs to do something about it. But I want you to notice what it says. God doesn't send angels to go deliver the Israelite slaves. He sends an 80-year-old stuttering sheep herder who's a fugitive from the law. He says, now you get going. I'm sending you. God still works in this way today. God sees and hears and knows the pain of other people, and then he longs to place that on our hearts. He longs to speak to us. And the burning bushes today may be a news story we see on television and we feel a nudge. It may be seeing somebody in God's Spirit touching us and saying, I need you to do something about this. It's looking around the world to see where is the world not yet like God wants it to be, and what does God want to do through us to make a difference. And my hope and prayer is that though we all have 1,000 excellent excuses as to why God should use someone else, we might, like Moses in the end, say to God, here I am, send me.
Now, go back to new sharing. And go back to this slide.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
can you see that? Can you see the black screen?
I'm seeing the video.
Yeah,
I see the video.
Okay.
It's delayed.
Yeah, I think it's delayed too, but I'm not sure.
All right. Oh, I see.
Beautiful.
Yeah, okay. Gotta look at that one.
Okay, that's the right one.
Wow.
There we go.
All right. So what are some of the feelings you think Moses might have experienced in going from the royal family in Egypt to a humble shepherd in a desert wilderness?
Yeah.
Well, he only just realized.
Speak up a little bit.
He only just realizes that he's really a Jew and has a calling. Humble shepherd is an interesting description, I guess.
Yeah.
It's quite a culture shock, I'm sure.
Yeah.
To be in a palace environment and then to be out in the desert wilderness.
Yeah.
I wonder too, it must have been not just a shock to him, but it's something that he didn't really plan. It isn't like he said, oh, I think I'd like to be a shepherd in the wilderness. He wound up in the wilderness because of something he did. And he did something because of something somebody else did that was wrong,
Yeah. I would imagine he might have been afraid too, that somehow get caught and punished. He was a fugitive.
Yeah, keep in mind that, the Hebrews would not have been considered, they would not have been treated like human beings. They would have been treated like, like virtual slaves. And so for a Hebrew to kill an Egyptian was really a bad thing. I mean, really bad thing to do. Not just it was a bad thing to kill somebody, but, for somebody of no stature at all to go killing somebody who had all the power and authority. Status.
So Moses encountered God in a burning bush. At what time in your own life have you felt that you have encountered God? Do you feel that you have encountered God?
Tough questions.
We all know my story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Encountered God.
Well, I was at church on Sunday, and after the service, the message where I go to church, the message really hit me, and I I just sat there and I was just sitting and everybody was getting up, and there's things going on in my life that sometimes my heart doesn't always look like it's, I know that I'm not reacting the right way to situations. Anyway, I was sitting there and I was kind of contemplating in my heart about what the sermon was and what I, you know, speaking to the Lord kind of, but anyway, a sister in the Lord saw me and she came up behind me and gave me a hug, which I cried because I felt like it, even though she's not God, but I just felt like God knew what was going on, and he prompted the sister to give me a hug. So it was just like getting a hug from God.
Well, you know, one of the things that Lutherans have always spoken about, when we talk about the sacraments, for example, we call them the means of grace. And means of grace, when you think of the sacraments, those are physical, material substances by which God communicates grace to us as his children. And so, you know, that hug may have very well been in its own way a means of grace.
I have to agree with you because I can't explain it other than God knew, and the sister came over and she came up behind me and she gave me a hug. I was still sitting down, and that's, anyway, it was wonderful as it happened. So
what's fascinating about it is that people somehow communicate that information without speech.
Yeah.
We have a lot of faculties that we don't know how to use.
Okay. All right, so Exodus 2, 11 to 23. Do I have a volunteer want to read?
All right, I'll read.
Thank you, Patsy.
One day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw two Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the room, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "What I did must have become known." When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. When the girls returned to Reuel, their father, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock."
Okay. So, Hamilton says that Moses killing the Egyptian and the account of Moses at the well in Midian suggests that Moses had an intolerance for injustice, as well as compassion for those who were harassed or oppressed. So, he also talked about, those of us that read the book, about Moses's name. Did anybody pick up on that?
I didn't.
That most of the names were son of, but Moses's name was just Moses, which would make him stand out as someone who did not have a father.
Right.
Yeah. So the author suggests Moses' name might offer clues as to why he acted as he did. and that Moses had a real compassion for people who were being oppressed. So have you ever been bullied or seen someone be bullied as a young person in school or an adult in a workplace? How did you respond?
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely was bullied in school. I think it was in middle school, and can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. And it happened to be that my mother was a school nurse. I always had someone like throw my books down the stairs or always following me and picking on me. So, but I was always taught to just ignore it, just turn the other cheek, I guess, or walk away. And that's how I always respond now. You know, when I was physically abused by my ex-husband, I always hid to myself. Like I never told anybody, you know, until much later. But I think that's how I was taught.
Mm-hmm. Right. Do you feel that the treatment makes you bitter and resentful or stronger and more compassionate? What do you think?
Stronger and more compassion, for sure.
Yeah.
Anyone else have something they want to share?
I have something I want to share, but it doesn't answer the questions. Is that all right?
Of course, of course.
I was really glad that he talked about this story with Moses killing the Egyptian, because the one insight that I really like about this story is that pathetic event where Moses comes out and he kills the one guy and then runs away. That's what I see as human beings, is man's attempt to free the people of Israel. And that happens before the burning bush and before God meets Moses. Moses, you know, God sends Moses to on his call and everything. And the people are released from Egypt. I see that as us trying to do it without God's help. You know, it's really sad. He sees this slave and he kills him. And, you know, what did that do? It did nothing. He just killed the guy. Then the whole rest of the book is what God does, you know, what he does with, Moses does with God's power. So it's not as personal or anything, not as good.
Okay.
That's just what I wanted to add to my 2 cents.
I wonder if Moses was afraid of, you know, when he reprimanded the guy for hurting the slave. I wonder if he was afraid of what that guy would do to him.
Yeah, he runs. He ran away.
Yeah. All right. He would at least tell on him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or did he have a temper?
I don't know.
Yeah.
So what skills must Moses have learned in his first years in Pharaoh's court? Wait a minute. Oh, sorry. Explore wilderness. Yep. Hamilton speculates about how Moses, who had been raised in the court of Pharaoh, might have felt about the abrupt change in his fortune. He observes that Moses' time in the wilderness can serve in some ways as a metaphor for events in our own lives. Those periods when things are not going well.
I don't see that screen.
You can't see that?
I only saw the screen about the first screen about being bullied. I don't see the second screen that you just read.
That's interesting. How about now?
No.
No.
What's it, everyone else?
No, I didn't see the second one either.
How about now?
Yes. Now
Okay.
I got it.
Good. So yeah, so Hamilton is talking about Moses' time in the wilderness can serve as ways for events in our own lives, periods when things are not going well. So what are some ways that God can use our seasons in the wilderness to prepare and shape us for God's good purposes?
Has anyone had an experience like being in the wilderness?
Haven't you missed out? Yeah, I guess so. It's hard to track that, to know in retrospect if you were in fact in the wilderness or you just confused. From a religious standpoint, no, I don't know. But from a standpoint of life around me, I do. I will tell you that I was sitting in my house and my family, we were raising our children, and my wife came in and sat down and said, I want a divorce. Ooh. It was one of the most devastating moments in my life because I had never really experienced that kind of rejection.
Wow. Yeah, I almost feel like the pandemic, in a sense, has been kind of in the wilderness.
Being in the wilderness, yeah. Especially the lockdown.
Right. The anxiety, the lockdown.
Quarantine.
Yeah.
My house was quarantined for 10 days. We couldn't go out.
Yeah. So did those experiences shape us for God's good purposes?
Of course, nobody ever learned anything from success.
Yeah.
That's true. Years ago, I was bullied in another church. And at that time, I had several positions of authority over different groups in the church. And not that I ran crazy with the power, but I always looked out for the children that I was taking care of and the committees that I was head of and the council and whatever. And when I was bullied, I was in essence told, you cannot do what you want to do anymore. You have to do what we say. And it was a very hard lesson. And I thought long and hard about it, and I prayed about it, and finally I said, I have to walk away. So I walked away and I said, okay, God, now what? I'm just floating. I'm a church person. That's where my roots are. I've got to find where I can do this again. And that's when I started thinking about this, and we had another church and it was Lutheran. And I said, well, you know what? It's a little distant. The other church I could literally walk to. And this one I had to ride to. And I came here and I had to start out as a pew sitter, as a nobody. And that was okay. That was okay. I learned to look to other people for guidance and to find a way to serve in other ways. And I never looked back. I never said, I wish I was still there.
Yeah. So, okay. So what do you think, what skills must Moses have learned in his first years in Pharaoh's court?
Oh. I was thinking about that. Would he have been, he would have learned how to read, and he probably learned math and maybe about the agriculture around him. Those are, I'm maybe about science.
Yeah.
I think that they, if he was brought up in Pharaoh's court, there was a lot of, and maybe he even saw things about like the law, because he probably got to witness things that, that they did in their courts. I was also talking about the fact that when he went, maybe this is unrelated, when he went out and he saw the fact that the Hebrew was being attacked, and he went to defend the Hebrew by killing the Egyptian. That was something also when he went to go and be a shepherd in Midian, then he would have to protect the sheep. And I was thinking about the fact that God raises up leaders that want to protect the sheep, you know, protect the sheep from the enemy. So, and using the skills that they have that God has prepared them with.
Right.
So that's my
probably learned that in a very everyday sense in terms of being a shepherd, because that's what he would have had to do as a shepherd.
Right.
Protect the sheep.
In the first years of his time at Pharaoh's court, he learned the skills of ruling. What you do that is right for your people and what you do that is not. And he had to find that early on under Pharaoh, because pharaohs were divine.
Yeah.
You know, they believed that they were direct descendants from God.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think we kind of already talked about, as you look back, times in your wilderness that prepared you for later experiences. Yeah. Move us.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we go to explore the encounter in the burning bush. Do I have a volunteer that wants to read?
If nobody else wants to do it.
And mine says the screen is like cut off in certain places, so I can't.
Yeah. All right, we'll have Dale read. He's a good reader.
Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. That is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Go, assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt. But take the staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it. Then Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, "Let me return to my own people in Egypt to see if any of them are still alive." Jethro said, "Go, and I wish you well." Now the Lord said to Moses in Midian, "Go back to Egypt, for all those who wanted to kill you are dead." So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and started back to Egypt. And he took the staff of God in his hand. The Lord said to Moses, "When you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders I have given you the power to do. For I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then say to Pharaoh, 'This is what the Lord says. Israel is my firstborn son, and I told you, let my son go so he may worship me. But you refused to let him go, so I will kill your firstborn son.' At a lodging place along the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. 'Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me,' she said. So the Lord let him alone. At that time she said, 'bridegroom of blood,' referring to circumcision. The Lord said to Aaron, 'Go into the wilderness to meet Moses.' So he met Moses at the mountain of God and kissed him. Then Moses told Aaron everything the Lord had sent him to say, and also about all the signs he had commanded him to perform. Moses and Aaron brought together all the elders of the Israelites, and Aaron told them everything the Lord had said to Moses. He also performed the signs before the people, and they believed. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshiped.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was a long one.
Yeah. So as we evaluate Moses' excuses, which ones seem valid? Think about excuses you have made. Which excuses came out of real feelings? Excuses, which ones seem valid?
I've always identified with Moses when he tells God, I don't think I read it here, but he does complain to God and say, "I can't speak. I don't. How am I going to be able to do this job that you're giving me?" And that's how I felt. And a lot of other pastors I spoke to in the beginning, they can't. They're not able to speak in front of a group of people. I mean, I know that's a great fear for a lot of people, public speaking, but that's a pretty relevant excuse. But then God says, "I'll send Aaron with you. He can speak." But then Aaron never winds up speaking. God, just gives him the power to speak in front of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep in mind that at this point, Moses is roughly 80 years old.
That's what
I wasn't going to say that. And he's just starting out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the lifespan, for some reason, was different.
They could live to 120.
Yeah. And some of the others, they lived a long time. Methuselah lived a long time.
Yeah.
1,000 years.
Good living.
Yeah.
I
But he was
Didn't
old.
watch TV.
But he was old. He wasn't young, and yeah. And think about how the Holy One responded to Moses. What do God's responses say about God? Do you see patience, persistence, something else?
Patience.
Yeah, a lot of
Patience.
Doesn't take no for an answer.
God had his number.
Yeah. Yeah, and he offered to help him, right?
Yeah. Very kind.
Yeah. So who offered to help Moses in responding to God's challenging call? Who offered to help Moses?
Jethro?
Aaron, I don't know.
Aaron?
As Christians, what partners are available to us as we answer challenging calls today?
Here we are.
Our church mates,
we see people that are alone, but there are groups like this all over the country, all over the world.
That's true.
There's a few people who are meeting and studying and expanding their understanding.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering where that came from. They're saying that God said, tell him I am.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was wondering where that came from. Now I know.
Is there a translation for that, like in Hebrew or something?
Yod He Vav He.
Hmm?
Yod He Vav He. Those are the letters. Yehovah.
Jehovah.
Yeah. So that's like the big thing where God reveals his name. But I had to laugh this time reading it because I never noticed. They say, Moses says something funny. He says, what shall I say when they say, what's God's name? Like, what a crazy question that is. I never thought of that. What is your name? I'm God. What do you mean?
Well, who are you representing? Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's true, because there were many gods back then. Maybe that's...
Yeah, it's a world with many gods.
Yeah.
Still is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know. It just made me think of the funeral service last week.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it was a 4-point sermon. And God is for you. Or God is for us, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So each point I preached on, I started out with God. And I you know, as you think about just talking about God, it's a generic word, but for us as Christians, it's a very important word. Mm-hmm. And it has a lot of content, a lot of meaning and history to it. It's not just a word, in other words, not just a noun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so just before we read that, to remind people that frequently God does not send angels or engage in miraculous interventions in order to work in the world. God works through people, often unlikely people. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I have a plaque on the outside of my house that says, look for the angels. They're everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a little while ago, during the video, I got up and left because someone came in looking for a prayer shawl.
Oh.
Yeah, and you know, he's wearing a mask and all that, big guy, right? And you look at him and you say, he's looking for a prayer shawl to give to somebody who's sick. You know, when you think of, you know, the whole thing of how God works with people, you wouldn't expect that somebody that looked like that would be coming for a prayer shawl, right?
Yeah. All right, so Exodus 3. Now I'll read it. Now Moses was telling the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire and within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. So, what was unusual about the burning bush?
That's an easy question.
That was easy, right?
It wasn't burning,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't help, I have to say this, you know, we recently did something in our family room, so now we have a new fireplace. And we have a fireplace that's always burning, but it's never burned up. So maybe it was one of those, who knows? In the video, it sure looked like our fireplace, you know?
I don't
It's like that
so.
one they show on television that burns.
Right,
forever.
right, around Christmas time, right.
And Christmas, yeah.
Right, so, but why do you think this unusual quality was significant?
Because God is forever. He's never.
Yeah, it's eternal.
Oh, okay.
Inexhaustible.
Yeah.
Which is another characteristic of eternal. Just implies a length of time, but the resourcefulness of it, the inaccessible nature of God.
Yeah.
That's good.
Don't run out of God.
No.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Right. So it says, point out that Moses or anyone else might have responded to the burning bush by simply continuing to tend the sheep. Instead, Moses noticed that the bush was not consumed by the fire. And it was only after Moses took notice that the angel of the Lord appeared to him. So, what are some ways we can cultivate more awareness of the burning bushes in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know the little bit of fasting I've done in my life, that's something that every time that you get hungry and you want to get food, you remember why you're doing it. So that's something that we can do that cultivates, us noticing God in our lives, because then we always remember God. That's one of the reasons. Yeah.
I can never fathom that people say they have to go to church to see God. If you can walk down the street and not see God, there's something wrong with you.
That's blinded.
Yeah.
I know I've done it here, but I brought a seed in from anything, from any plant, and put it down on the table and said, all of the human beings in the world, putting their intelligence together, cannot make that seed.
Yeah.
I think of Vacation Bible School, we talk about God sightings, where we ask the kids, where did you see God, in the last 24 hours, since you were here last, and it's interesting to hear what the kids say.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably would be able to answer that question better.
They do.
Yeah,
They do.
Especially when you tell them to pay attention. Tell us tomorrow what you see.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So Hamilton says God's call is often less comes in a dramatic burning bush. Most often it comes as a feeling, a nudge, or a compulsion that we can't shake. So have you had examples in your own life of God's nudging? What are some practices that will enable us to be more responsive to them?
Listening. I always love listening as an answer. If you're too busy with the world, you can't hear anything. You just hear cars and people talking and things going on, television sets and all that stuff, cell phones. And sometimes you just need to go somewhere where you can just listen. In times past, I go back to people like Thomas Jefferson, who of course was a genius to begin with, but he used to travel from his home in Virginia in a carriage or on horseback to Philadelphia. And that's a long ride. You made several stops. But in the meantime, when you're riding a horse, you can't do much else but think. You have to pay attention to the horse and where you are and how you're seated and everything. But you have an opportunity to concentrate your mind, which we, in our busy lives, mostly have lost. It's very hard now to get to a point where you can sit quietly without interference from the world around you. And that's a great loss.
Yeah, you make me think of one of the things that a few years back was very popular was the building of labyrinths, and so you'd have, like you take the backyard of the church and you'd make a labyrinth there, and then people could come as they wish, and just start and follow in a prayerful way until they get to the center and then go back out, So very peaceful.
Unfortunately, I have to go back to work.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, Mary Ellen.
I'm sorry.
Nice to
But
have
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I had an experience. Well, I didn't have an experience. One of my former coworkers' husband died suddenly. it's probably about 2 weeks now. And I've just been so concerned about her. You know, I went to the wake, I went to the funeral just because, you know, and, you know, I tried to call her yesterday. You know, it's a nudging that I just have to reach out to her. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the characteristics of being a pastor too. There's all kinds of nudges.
Oh, sure.
To keep you going all night, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are the burning bushes in our day-to-day lives.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
So
did we go to
We
this?
did that.
yeah.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So then in the coming week, I will commit to the following ways to cultivate awareness of God's nudges.
Well, I got a nudge every week to attend church, you know. You know, that's where God will speak to me.
Come to Bible study.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I get up in the morning and because I'm not working or anything, I get my husband off to work and then I come into my, I call my craft room. It's really full of junk. But I have a little area set up with my Bible and a candle and some music. And so then my dog knows it's time to do that. She'll like, come on, let's go. And she'll walk me down there. My nudge to go down there. If I don't go down there, she's like, wait a minute, why aren't we going down? And she'll lay there with me while I'm doing my reading and praying.
Nice.
So that's my nudge in the morning.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. So.
Any other thoughts about that?
Nudges.
We'll be moving on here.
Okay.
Well, I get up and I've been scribing the scriptures, so I'm almost done with the book of James. I started June 1st, and every day I write more and more, and so it's been really speaking to me about the fact that, and he's been nudging me toward just following him closer. So it's been good.
Very good. All right, so we're up to our wrapping up. So he has some questions. Like Moses, who had to flee Midian after murdering the Egyptian, I have had experiences of being in the wilderness. Looking back, I say that I learned.
Patience.
Patience.
Trust the nudge.
Yeah. Trust. Yep.
Think of the movie we went to see the other day, on Saturday, I guess it was, right? And the abuela, she had two words, paciencia y fe, patience and faith. You know, it must have taken a lot of Moses, must have taken a lot of faith from Moses when he's out there in the wilderness to decide to go back.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't think about just maybe you can answer this question. Moses grew up knowing he was a Hebrew, and then he had to escape because he killed the Egyptian. Did he had up until the point that he left and then God met him in the desert at the burning bush? Did he really have an understanding of who God was at that point? I mean, did he know the God of his people?
Yes.
It would be a hard question to answer because Pharaoh was considered to be divine.
Right.
So they had different gods. They worshiped the sun.
Right.
So this
Depends on how much he learned as a young child from his mother being the nursemaid, you know. Because once he was in the Egyptian sphere of influence, that would have been the main thing.
And yet I don't think that God wasted that any of that time that he was there in Pharaoh's court. It wasn't wasted time, because he was able to he was able to speak the language really well too, I guess, and go when he went back to Pharaoh's court to tell them, you know, my God has told me to tell you to let him go. Anyway, this is a thought.
Yeah.
What we sometimes fail to understand is the people that we're reading about, like Moses, were the literati of their time.
They were what?
Literati. They understood the language and they could read.
Right.
And most of the population was illiterate in those days. And so they were able to communicate with each other at a completely different level.
Yeah, especially if you look at hieroglyphics, you had to be pretty smart.
Oh boy,
to read that.
I've looked at that on several occasions and thought to myself, how do you translate Sumerian text into Hebrew or Latin or English? And the same with the hieroglyphics. How does one translate that? How do you understand what you see?
Yeah.
I was reading a piece recently that the pyramids of Giza are considered to be the world's largest power plant. They make electricity.
Wow.
But there were no light bulbs. So
that's wrong.
There were light bulbs?
There was some kind of a light bulb. There's a drawing of it in one of the texts that I was reading. And of course they had the Baghdad battery. And so you didn't need a battery unless you had some reason to use it. And so it could give off enough so that you could use something that was like a weak flashlight. Because they wandered around underground. I mean, they were in darkness.
Yeah.
And there's no discoloration. There's no soot on the ceilings. The tunnels are free of soot. So they had some way to move around that they could see, but it wasn't a fire, because the fire wouldn't have burned anyway. There wasn't enough oxygen. They just barely had enough to breathe. The study of the pyramids is a fascinating undertaking, and you can't begin to scratch the surface with what we know today.
Yeah, just what we've seen in this study of how big they are and how,
and how perfect they are.
It's amazing. Amazing.
The measurements are absolutely precise.
Yeah.
It's like somebody did it today with the tools we have today.
Yes,
we couldn't.
Exactly.
We could not build much of what exists in the ancient world today with the machines that we have.
Yeah.
There are 100-ton blocks of stone.
Yeah.
100 tons. We cannot move on a 100-ton block of stone.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Merlin was at his best.
So let's see. So like Moses, I have known times when I was reluctant to accept a call from God. I felt ill-prepared, but wow. Any thoughts on that?
No.
So when did Moses lead the people out of Egypt?
I guess it was after all this, right?
Yeah. Next time, probably.
Next chapter, in chapter 3?
Yeah, right. 40 chapters in Exodus. Oh, it does say next week is the Exodus.
Oh,
but you got to get through 10 plagues.
Yeah.
You got 10 plagues you got to do.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Did you do the prayer?
No, not yet. Not yet. Right.
I have something I want to share afterwards.
Okay. All right. So I guess we're up to our closing prayer. God of the burning bush, We sometimes don't feel up to answering your call. We lack the skills or the vision or the will to do what needs to be done. Yet we know that you persist. Grant that when we hear you calling, get going, I'm sending you, we may respond, here I am, send me. Amen.
Amen.
All right. We'll stop the sharing. Okay. Very good. So there we are. And yeah, what I want to share with you is just I've been doing some more reading this week, and I have the book, A Time to Heal. I've talked about it a little bit with some folks. Sue's familiar with it, I know. The subtitle is Offering Hope to a Wounded World in the Name of Jesus. And it's by J.R. Briggs. And so, you know, I'm looking at that with the thought that we might want to consider using that as a resource for meeting together in the future. There are 8 chapters, and it has to do with, this book was written this year, by the way, and was published like in March or April. What's this, June, right? Okay. What do we do with our wounds? Where is the hope we have and have to offer? How did Jesus heal, and how are we to join him in the healing process? How will the church be the body of Christ to a hurting world? How can we deepen our trust in the Holy Spirit to guide us as healers? How can we be prepared to be bringers of healing? What are the marks of wounded healers? And what is the connection between leadership and healing? And those are the chapters. And so, you know, I was suggesting that we might take a look at the book. There's no leader's guide, so we would have to, in effect, make up a leader's guide. But it might be a fun thing to do. And might be something the vicar might want to get engaged in. Anyway, J.R. Briggs lives in Philadelphia. He was the one that led the seminar that I took part in a few weeks ago. And I have his email address. So I was thinking that we might be able to get him to join us as part of a Zoom session or something along the way. Something to think about. Anyway.
Yes, sir. Interestingly enough, I'm reading the news this morning, and there's a person called Lisa Feldman Barrett, and she wrote a book called How Emotions Are Made, How Emotions Are Made, The Secret Life of the Brain. And it's all the things that we've been talking about. It's like post-COVID stuff. And I wrote down some of the things that was in this article. And it's so much of what Jesus is telling us to do. I'm going to get the book and maybe use it as a reference if we use this book, Time of Healing, because it also talks about gratuity, being gracious, having gratitude for the things around you, looking at nature, and we could just pull in so much of Jesus's message to this book. It was just, I found it very fascinating, and it was a very short article, and I wrote 5 pages because it's exactly what we need to help people regain their emotional positive behaviors. I think it would be it would work well with this book you're talking about, because it's exactly the same kind of focus. So I'm going to get that book, and then I can show you guys and see what we can meld together. If the vicar is going to do the Bible study.
Yeah.
No comment.
No, I already agreed to it, kind of.
Well, yeah.
I found it.
The vicar has to come up with a project as part of his internship. And he originally said that he was interested in something related to prayer. And so I thought, well, this certainly is a book about prayer when you talk about time for healing. So anyway, we'll talk about it some more and get back to you on it. And maybe we'll order a few copies of the book for people who want to read it. So it's very easy reading. It's good reading.
Yes.
It's very substantial too, so that's good. All right. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have today's reading from Sunday, and it's Lamentation. It says, "For the Lord will not reject forever, although he causes grief, he will hear compassion." And then he says, "For he does not willingly afflict or grieve anyone."
Mm-hmm.
Why?
That's what he said.
Yeah. It's kind of a contradiction.
Yeah, the causes grief.
The Lord, will not reject forever, although he causes grief, he will have compassion.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean?
Yeah.
Although he will cause grief.
Well, of course, things that happen that will give you grief. Somebody dies, somebody loses a job, somebody, he lets things happen.
He lets things happen.
But not makes things happen. Is that the
I don't think
difference? Because
I think there's a difference.
He causes grief.
Well, he doesn't do it as a response to what it is. He doesn't cause you.
Oh.
He doesn't look at you and go, you grieve.
But so it's worth thinking about it at greater length. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I had the same reaction when I saw that. I was kind of like,
Did you
I was like, what? It didn't, right.
I did too. But the thing is, if you read a lot of the Old Testament, God did strike down a couple of things that the chosen people were not doing right, and gave them opportunities to turn away from their sinful ways. They were disobedient often. But I think part of it is the Messiah. Jesus is what gives us the positive, I guess not the negative, but the positive negative, but Jesus gives us the saving grace that he doesn't turn away. He's there to comfort and protect us.
The Old Testament in many respects was very rigid in its requirements.
What psalm did you read?
What, John?
What psalm did she read?
What's that on?
Lamentations 3.
Oh, Lamentation. Thank you.
Lamentation.
Yeah. Well, our time is kind of up, so.
I think Sheila's looking it up then.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Lamentations now.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to.
20 minutes.
You don't have to stay on that. I just wanted. Couldn't hear what it was. I want to look it up myself. But
yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. And my other suggestion is that at the bottom of those pages from Sunday, they have the lessons for the coming Sunday. You notice they're in very small print, but it's usually at the bottom, right above all the credits and everything that's at the bottom. And those are the texts that you can look at in advance of our Thursday event. And this week especially, I encourage you to look them up because the vicar is going to look at them.
What's that?
The lessons.
Yeah, I know. Ezekiel.
Yeah. All right. So, well, so long, everyone, and have a good time down there in Florida. I hope hope it's not as hot as it is here.
It's nice. We have nice weather.
It's 89 degrees in Selden right now, according to my watch.
How hot is it?
89.
Hotter.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right.
Probably about the same temperature in Miami.
Yeah.
Okay, well, take care, everybody.
All right.
And get home safely, Sue. We'll see you eventually.
Sometime soon.
Yeah, next week. I'll see you Thursday, though.
Okay.